Let's talk a little bit more about this lengthen your glutes concept. So anytime I have you hinging and when we are squatting, although it is a bit different when we talk about it for squatting, so for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to refer to hinging. When we are talking about that length in the glutes, I want you to understand what it looks like and what it does not look like. This is super, super important. We're going to start with it on our hands and knees. If you've done a lot of deadlifting before, you may be like, okay, yeah, next, got it. It's fine. But make sure to check in with yourself about this because it can change postpartum. After my third baby, Mason, I had been hinging for a decade as a personal trainer. And I look back at some of my videos when I started getting back into training again after I had Mason, and my hinge was not the same whatsoever. I had a lot of posterior pelvic floor tightness and I wasn't really aware of it. So even if you are very proficient at hinging, I strongly encourage you to check in with yourself and make sure that you are feeling things in the right spots and that everything looks like it should. All right, so let's get into what length in the glutes looks like versus what it does not look like. I think one of the easiest ways to just clearly see this without a lot of other stuff going on is on our hands and knees. So I want you to get on your hands and knees with me, and we're gonna make sure that we have our hands underneath our shoulders. I don't want them way out in front of you, and you're gonna have your knees under your hips, okay? So we're gonna be right here, and we're gonna practice that ribs down, deep core up like we talked about. So ribs down, deep core up, and checking in, making sure when you did that, that you didn't do this right here, because we don't need to do this to get our ribs down, okay? So you shouldn't have done that. All right, so ribs down, deep core up. Now, for a really good hinge, this is what's gonna happen. This is what happens when you're doing a deadlift. You're gonna be able to keep that connection, ribs down, deep core up, and you're gonna be able to send your hips back without them doing this, all right? What I don't want to happen is for you to go back and you to start tucking under. That's not how we hinge. How we hinge is we're able to start to travel backwards and let our glutes lengthen and open. And you can let your elbows come down some, but you're also trying to make sure that you can keep that connection with your deep core and your ribs down. And at first you may not go very far, and that's fine. It's totally fine. I'm really not looking for you to have this huge range of motion. I just want you to be able to understand that it is okay for your hips to be able to go back without coming under, okay? Now, the other thing we want to keep in mind is that as we're practicing this, that we don't want to be like this, okay? This is too much. We don't want this huge dip in our low back or lordosis in our lumbar spine. I like to think of it as a tiny twerk. So if I am right here, this is just a little bit too flat. And this is a little bit too much. So we gotta find in the Goldilocks kind of situation where we should have a very small amount of lumbar lordosis here. That's normal and that's good. We want that. We don't want it to be totally flat. So we wanna make sure that we understand, okay, where is that spot where I've got that little tiny twerk, and you should be able to feel, again, that ribs down, deep core up, and then letting yourself go back. And what you're looking for is just the gentlest feeling of this kind of opening up right here on that back side. We can even take an inhale here. And you should be able to feel right in between your sits bones, or literally like a butthole breath that you've heard me talk about probably so many times. But that is how a butthole breath happens. It happens when we're able to let our posterior pelvic floor go. And it is going to feel like this gentle spreading in between your sits bones, and it will feel like it just kind of relaxes from the inside. It's not gonna feel like you're bearing down. It's not gonna feel like you're pooping or trying to push anything out. It just feels like this gentle spreading that happens. And you wanna make sure you can feel that in that hands and knee position when you're a little deeper into that hinge. So when your glutes are a little bit behind your knees, and when I say little bit, it may be like 6 inches max. It's not going to be a huge range of motion, but I want you to get used to being able to let your hips go back without tucking your tailbone under. All right, hopefully that was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.